Right before we jump into this video, if you'd like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations, just look for this orange box over on my website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you that guide for free. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and is it time to say goodbye to Sony and hello to Canon for me personally? Now, let me take you back a little bit to why this is becoming a decision that I have to make in my own head, because 2 weeks ago, I went out to photograph professional bowling on the PBA tour where I photographed Kyle Troop, and I took the Sony A1 kit because that's the kit that I've been using since the A1 came out, and I've been using Sony now for the past almost 3 years exclusively from when I switched from using Nikon. Now, I've never used Canon professionally. My first camera ever was a Canon EOS Elan 2E, and that was a film camera from 13 to 15 years old before I went to an N90S Nikon and shot Nikon up till like 39 years of age, and when I switched over to the Sony. But when I went out to the PBA event, the Sony A1 did a great job. The whole kit was awesome. It's light, it goes in the bag easy, it's easy to travel with, it's quick. We know it's one of the best systems out there on the market. But when I had the opportunity to go back out onto the PBA tour, this time to photograph Jason Belmonte, who is one of the greatest bowlers of all time, because he was giving me all access to do whatever I wanted, I had the Sony kit packed and ready to go the day before I was leaving. And then I started to debate, should I take the R3 kit? Now, look, I know I'm in a very privileged position to have a full Z9 kit, a full R3 kit, and a full Sony A1 kit. This isn't a dilemma for a lot of people out there. But if you're looking to invest in a system and decide which way to go, this might be beneficial to you. It's just that I have this first world problem of having access to all of this gear, and in my head, I'm debating it. Because there's two parts of me. There's the photographer part of me who's like, all right, as a photographer, this is what I want to use. And then there's also the YouTuber side. So from the photographer standpoint, I'm like, the A1 is great. This kit is awesome. It's worked for me with Kyle Troop out on the PBA tour, and it's worked with me for a lot of other things that I've done. But from a YouTuber and content creator standpoint, I was like, well, if I take the R3, I can make this video right here and have something to share with you guys. And that helped my decision to decide to take this. But I pretty much had three main hesitations to deciding on taking the R3 kit. And the first one is I cannot record my EVF, my electronic viewfinder, with the Atomos Ninja Star. But you can record what the EVF is seeing, but that's with an external recorder with a screen, and you're not shooting like an actual photographer, and you lose the option to look through the camera. Whereas with the Sony, you can put the EVF recorder on top, you get to see exactly what I get to see as a clean out, and that's great, so you can see what I'm doing. The Nikon, the Z9, and all the mirrorless Nikon cameras honestly do it pretty much the best out there, because you can see the dirty out. You can see all the focusing points moving. You can see as I change my shutter speeds, you see all the information, and I love that. So that hesitation was, I won't have that with this Canon camera. So you won't get to see exactly what I get to see. And I have a record for the last 3-ish years of every shoot that I've done, I've recorded video of my EVF while I was shooting. We use it for educational purposes sometimes, and I just think for historical purposes to look back on in the future, I think it's really nice to have. So that's one of my main hesitations that I had to get over with deciding to take this with me on the road, because I could put a GoPro in the hot shoe. Unfortunately, I have GoPro Hero 5s and the batteries aren't very good, and it doesn't look as good as a straight out EVF recording, but mentally I can get past that. The other thing is 24 megapixels. This is 50, this is 24. Is that bad? No, 24 isn't bad. We've used less than that as professionals. Now, I would prefer having more these days with clean ISO. The A1 does a good job. I still think the Z9 does a better high ISO capability than the A1, and I know we're not comparing it to the Z9, but I want to throw those positives out there for the Nikon because they do get that right. And I just think with 24 megapixels, having to shoot this at, say, 12,800, it's going to be better in the R3 than it is going to be in something like the A1. And the last hesitation is interesting. It's, what if I like it? What if I end up liking using the R3 Canon kit more than using the Sony kit? That just makes a lot of mental dilemmas in my own head. A lot of this I do it as a photographer, but I'm sharing what I'm doing with you guys as a YouTuber so that you can get a look inside of my world to help you decide what might work for you. But at the end of the day, I did make the decision to switch out all of the Sony gear. This all played out on Instagram, by the way. Breaking news, breaking news. So if I was to take the Canon kit in favor of taking the Canon kit. Now, another concern has to be the weight, because the weight of the lenses are much heavier than what you find on the Sony side. The body is very nice and nice feeling. But what are the differences in weight? Now what you're gonna see right here is we went ahead and weighed myself, and then we weighed myself having the bag filled with the Canon setup, and then we weighed myself having the Sony setup, and let's see what they weigh in at. Entering your screen right now is Jared to get his base weight. Now, I'm not sure why he decided to take his clothes off, but he did, and so you're gonna have to live with it. Entering from the right corner, we have Jared wearing his camera bag with the Canon kit, stepping on the scale, and this is how much it weighs. Entering from the left corner, we have Jared wearing his shoulder bag with the Sony kit. He steps on the scale, and this is how much it weighs. So as you can see, the Canon kit is clearly heavier. You're looking at a bag that weighs roughly 21 pounds, and when you add some more accessories in there, it's gonna be venturing up to 22 pounds. Now that's when it's fully loaded. Don't forget, when you're shooting, you have something out of the bag, you have a lens, you have a camera out of the bag, so it's gonna lessen some of the weight, but it's still a lot of weight to have on your shoulder. Now, the Sony kit is a little lighter. I mean, we're looking at like 4-ish pounds difference, which does add up over time. Now, when I was traveling and flying on the airplane, I made a video about this before, giving you some tips about flying with your gear, especially when you fly in small airplanes, and I didn't run into any issues this time. And one of the gate agents gave me a really good tip that I didn't think of last time for if you want to make sure you can take your gear on the plane with you, because the PSA, once again, just to do it quickly, is never check your camera gear. It's gotta go on the plane with you. Even if they say, oh, it doesn't fit, it will be fine. You carry it on any way possible if you can. You don't want to risk it. You don't want it to be damaged or lost. One of the things you can say is it's camera gear and lithium batteries. You can't put lithium batteries underneath the plane. So if you just say it's camera gear, lithium batteries, and be nice, but be a little forceful where you need to be, like it's camera gear, I need to take it on the plane, I can't risk it, so on and so forth. Let's move on. So use those tips. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you this image edited with a bunch of different presets that we've created, starting with Zoolander. Zoolander looks pretty good. Then we've got November Rain. I love how that one looks. Mount Airy is more light and airy. It's kind of the hot thing on the streets right now that a lot of people like. Then we jump up to Almost Famous, which gives you the kind of opposite of light and airy. It gives you a little bit of crunch to it, followed by Fifth Element. Now, those are from FroPack 3, but I want to jump into FroPack 2 and go to Matte Black High Contrast. Matte Black High Contrast gives you a great look. Double stuffed Oreos is like, wow, look at how good that works out. Followed by Dorothy, and then we've got Bob Ross for People. I just wanted to show you Bob Ross for People. And then from FroPack 1, being that this was taken in Kensington in Philadelphia, we've got Kensington, and that looks really good. So look, if you're looking to speed up your RAW workflow or give yourself a great starting point, I mean, I just gave you a lot of great starting points with one file. Well, we created 15 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack3. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or you could pick up the triple play bundle, which includes all the presets that you just saw me use and then some, and that's with FroPack 1, 2, and 3, and you can save a lot more. Now, let's get back to the video. My main go-to, and one of the reasons I decided to go with the R3, was the 28 to 70 millimeter f2. That is one of the most unique, versatile lenses that I've ever seen. To have a 28 to 70 that is an f2. I used to be all about f2.8 lenses. And then of course I liked the better. We had 1.8s, we had 1.4s, and in the DSLR days you had a couple of 1.2s made by Canon that you couldn't really shoot at 1.2 because they just back focused so bad at 1.2. You could barely ever get anything at 1.2. Now with all of the systems, the Nikon, the Canon, the Sony, you can shoot at 1.2 and get everything tack sharp because the systems have gotten so much better. But the images that I got out of this 2870 are fantastic. They are three-dimensional. You have a 3D feel with anything better than a 2.8. Because I was talking with Steven about this, when you see stuff taken with a 24 to 70 2.8, you just don't have the same separation. You don't have the same depth, and it looks more snapshotty. So the 28 to 70, that is so versatile that I had that on for a lot of time because you could do a portrait at f2, you could shoot the action, the focus is super fast, and you're not missing at f2. On the flip side, the other lens that I used a lot when I shot with the A1 was the 35 1.4. I love 35 for shooting, but the 24 to 70 2.8 Sony, not a very good lens. The Sigma one is the one that I took. I took about 4 pictures on the road with it when I was shooting Kyle Troop, and I left it in the bag because I didn't like the feel of it. There was no separation, and so I was limited to having the 35 1.4, and I had to move my feet. So that's why I love the 28 to 70. It's great. So that's a super versatile lens. Now, with that being said, I think Canon is going to come out with even more special RF glass. If they had a f2 Trinity, an f2 Hebrew Trinity, that would be awesome. Like a 12 to 20 f2 or a 12 to 24 f2, if they could pull that off, that would be awesome. An 85 to or an 80 to 135 f2, if they could do that, that would be amazing as well. Just these unique pieces of glass are the reasons that I am thinking of switching from the A1 kit and sticking with the Canon kit, even though it's only 24 megapixels. The lenses that they have are fantastic. Yes, they're heavier, but I had no problem holding them all day. It didn't seem to be an issue for me when I was out there shooting. Now, one of the other things that was a concern is that we have a 11 to 24 is the widest lens that they make. It's an 11 to 24 f4, it's EF, because they have a 15 to 35 2.8 RF. It's not wide enough, right? In this day and age, if you're not at a 12 millimeter, because Sony gives you a 12 to 24, that's a really good lens, it's gotta be wide. I like having that option. So I had to take the 11 to 24, and then you realize that it's an f4, which means you have to bump the ISO up a little bit, but the focus was really good. The wider shots, nice and sharp. I did see that when you had a subject more in the middle of the frame, it didn't look as tack as I would hope it would be, but they're gonna replace this with something else that's gonna be an RF. So that was a concern, but it was alleviated. Everything worked out really well. The 51.2 was a lens that I barely used when I was out there because I have a 28 to 70 f2 and an 85 1.2. So the 50 is something that I could get rid of and save some weight, or maybe take a different lens. Like if they come out with a 35 1.2, hey Canon, we need a 35 1.2. That would be an awesome lens, but then I'd have to debate, do I really want to take it? If I have room in the bag, sure, but man, the versatility of 28 to 70, I know I keep coming back to it, is fantastic. On the flip side, I did use the 51.2 from Sony quite a bit because I didn't have the zoom capability of a 28 to 70. Just didn't have it. So the 51.2 worked well, but I had the 135 1.8. That was like the longer lens that I took. Originally, I didn't take the 70 to 200 2.8, but if I was to take this kit out to photograph Belmo, I would have taken the new 70 to 200 2.8 because if you're doing sports, this is a great lens to have. And what I didn't have when I photographed Kyle Troop, that event wasn't gonna be on TV. It wasn't on Fox, so they didn't have all of the studio lights set up. But when I did photograph in Akron, Ohio, They did have a show on Fox, which means they brought in all of this LED lighting, which looks fantastic up there. It makes my job much easier. And then using a 70-200 2.8 because they have all of this lighting set up is so much easier. Even though I was still at 5000 ISO at 1/1000th of a second at 2.8, it's going to look absolutely fantastic because studio lighting all over this lane is going to be great, because bowling alleys are notoriously dark. And by bowling alleys, I really mean they want to call them bowling centers. They're super dark, and you can just see that it's very difficult to get great images, and that's why 2.8s or better really come in handy. The differences between the 70-200s, the Canon is super compact and small. Right now it has the lens hood on, but when you take the lens hood off, this is how small it gets. The issue is they decided to do a lens that extends out instead of, they went with compact with extending versus just making something like that. One of my issues with this lens is that the throw, I have to switch my hand and go this far to throw it all the way from 70-200. What I mean by throw is the 70-200 zoom. Did I run into issues with that when I was shooting? No, but I prefer the way that Sony has done it. Their throw is super duper short. I can just do it with a thumb. There's 200, there's 70, and I'm all the way through. It's just a little bigger when you're traveling with it, but it's well worth it to take it in your bag. Now, if you want to see the photos from the last 2 events that I've done out with the PBA Tour, you can go over to my website, which is built using Squarespace, and I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. It's just so easy to put up the galleries. The Kyle Troop gallery took me a matter of 5 minutes to set up and put exactly where I needed it to be. I uploaded my images at 4,000 pixels. Squarespace is going to go ahead and make a bunch of different sizes for it so that if people are looking at it on bigger screens, it's going to look better. If they're looking at it on the phone, it's going to use the smaller version of it. It's just so easy to use, and if you don't have your own place to showcase your portfolio, I highly recommend you go to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto to get your 14-day free trial. If you decide to pick it up, use my code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. I've been using Squarespace for over 10 years, so it definitely works. Give it a check out. Now let's move on to feel of the bodies. I love the way the R3 feels in my hands. The button layouts are great. The smart controller is so much quicker for moving focusing points if you ever need to actually move the focusing points because the focus isn't where you need it to be. Whereas the A1 is more bottom heavy, right? Sony's done a great job at miniaturizing everything. That's what they're known for, and they do an awesome job at that. But they've never made a pro feeling body. I mean, the R3 is a pro feeling body. It has a grip built in. It has the battery, a nice large battery in the bottom, which I did expect to get more battery life out of. It did kind of chew through battery when I was taking stills and doing some video. I expected that to be a little bit better, but I could plug a power adapter right into it from my battery pack and charge it up while I wasn't shooting to give it extra juice if I needed it. But it just feels super balanced in the hands, and the button layout is fantastic. Now, the Sony, the button layout is really good on there too, but it's super bottom heavy because that's where the batteries are, because you have to put a grip onto it, which is nice when you can take it off. But I would like to see Sony make a professional feeling body with the A1 Mark II. They probably won't ever do it, but when it's integrated, it just feels better. If you ever pick up an R3, it feels like a feather. It is so damn light, but it's nice and balanced. And I love some of the options that I have to just hit the OK button. It zooms into 100% on the last photo that I took. I could hit it again and get it right off. And I don't have to take my eye off of the viewfinder. I can be previewing images and zooming in and moving around without having to make a bunch of button presses. I seem to have to do that with the Sony. Now, there are some quick ways to get through that, but I still like the way that the Canon does it. The biggest takeaway from all of this and the experience of using this at both PBA events is that I feel, and this is from personal use, that the R3's autofocus is slightly better than the A1. It's been pretty darn close and on par, but after going out and shooting a football game with the R3 and the A1, I just feel that the face detect and the eye detect is more accurate on the Canon side. Meaning if Steven was standing in front of me right now and I didn't even look and I went like this without even looking, it's finding his face without a problem. I wouldn't even need to look when I press the button because it will go right to his face. Sometimes I feel with the Sony is that it doesn't recognize the eyes at a distance like the Nikon does and like the Canon does now. And I feel like the lock-on tracking, which is fantastic and works really well, will maybe lock onto the eyebrow or the forehead, which at a distance isn't a big deal, whereas the Canon will just show you the face box. And it just seems from my real-world usage of using both that it's just more accurate and better. With that being said, I did not feel like I missed anything with the A1. Again, this is a first world problem for me to figure out because I get to use both of these or all the systems that are there, and then I get to share with you what my feelings are. But at this point, I feel that the tech inside of the R3 in terms of autofocus is a little smidge ahead of where the Sony is. And that's not to say Sony's not gonna start making theirs even better because now they know what Nikon did, now they know what Canon did. They could be having something up their sleeve and pull a rabbit out that's gonna make it even better in the future. But I did speak with the engineers in Japan about the A1 and gave them a lot of feedback from using the Nikon and from using the Canon for things they can do to improve this system. And that's the cool part that I get to take advantage of, is that I can do that for everybody. Now, I printed 3 prints off the Canon ProGraph 1000 inkjet printer here at the studio from photos that I took when I was out in Akron, Ohio with Jason Belmonte, and I want to give those away. So there's 3 places you can go to get those. Leave a comment down below here on YouTube saying, I want one of those prints. Let me know which one of these 3 you want, and maybe I will select you at random and ship that to you, and you can win that. Now you can also go over to Instagram and look for the reel where I'm showing off the 3 prints. Leave a comment there, tag a friend you want to share a print with. Maybe I'll send a second one in the tube and you can give them one. And the other way you can get one is send me a text message to my text line. The number is up on the screen, and let me know that you want one of the prints. There's a pretty good chance that you might win one there because there's less people on my text line than on my YouTube and my Instagram. So that is, I believe that's just US only. Maybe it's now Canada, but those are your chances to win some of the free prints. So at the end of the day, am I saying goodbye to Sony? And I think the answer to that is possibly. I didn't just use that as clickbait. I mean, technically I did use it to get you to watch the video, but it's true. I am highly considering using this as my go-to camera when I'm traveling, because obviously we see that it's about 4 pounds heavier, but I like the options that I get. And when Canon comes out with an R1, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. Canon, hey, Canon Japan, please give me the option to do a dirty out from the to the EVF, from the EVF, so I can record that, because that would kind of be signed, sealed, and delivered. I'm yours if you do that. Because 28 to 75 with the ability to record the electronic viewfinder, I think it's a no-brainer for me personally. I would be switching as soon as you made that happen. With all of that being said, I've said it a million times, I've got options to use all of these things. You have choices to make, and you're not gonna end up jumping systems and switching systems like I do, because I have all of this stuff here at the factory with a security system that is top-notch so that you can't break in and steal it. And if I decide to use the A1, I'm not gonna be upset at all, because that is one of the greatest cameras in the history of cameras. So what I'd like you to do is let me know which system you would take and why in the comments down below. I thank you guys very much for watching. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.